We are nearly 1 month away from WWDC 2019, in which Apple will announce its latest updates to iOS. And while we still don't have a ton of concrete information about iOS 13, we do have a lot of rumors that have been circulating over these past few months on what we could expect to see announced at the event. The first rumored feature is one that we've all been waiting for a very long time, and that is a system-wide dark mode. Last year, Apple brought this feature over to macOS, and it just makes a whole lot of sense for iOS to be the next step. There are a few obvious benefits to having a system-wide dark mode, most notably being it's easier on the eyes when you're in the dark. I mean, we've all used our phones in bed, even though you probably shouldn't. We do, and what's worse is that our iPhone's displays are so bright and vivid these days that even cranking down that brightness does not really help at all. But a system-wide dark mode could possibly help us out. Plus, from a personal standpoint, I think it looks great with certain apps, and iPhones with OLED displays could get better battery life with a system-wide dark mode in place. Actually, Samsung has implemented this in its latest software update, One UI, and it's something that I think most users have been really enjoying, and one that I think iPhone users would enjoy too. Speaking of Android, one thing that I really do like when using an Android device is the ability to customize my home screen to my personal preference and to my liking, something that fits my personality more. I can move apps wherever I want to, I can set up widgets for quick information right on my home screen, etc. And while I don't believe customization to this degree is going to happen anytime soon, and probably not in iOS 13, we should expect to see some sort of redesigned home screen. But again, details are fairly limited at this time. I'd honestly be happy with just being able to move all of my apps off of one homepage and be able to have an empty page just so I can see my wallpaper. I'd be happy with just the little things. While we're on the topic of the little things, the volume HUD, this super obtrusive in-your-face graphic that lets you know that you're turning the volume up and down. Yeah, let's do something about that, please. Thankfully, in iOS 13, it's rumored that something should in fact happen with this volume HUD that should hopefully be less in your face. Maybe we can take a page from Instagram and move that thing to the upper left corner. It seems like a perfect place in my opinion. The Mail app from Apple is a very solid email app. I think we can all agree that it works really well, and it does, for most people, exactly what they need it to do. A few months ago, we made a video on some of the better alternatives out there if the Mail app isn't quite cutting it for your needs. Well, it seems like Apple might be adding a few features that a lot of other popular third-party applications like Spark and Newton have had for literally years, like being able to organize messages into searchable categories like marketing, purchases, travel, not important, etc. Plus support for maybe a read later option and possibly the ability to mute incoming mail notifications for specific email threads. All good things on that front that might warrant me switching back to the stock Mail app. Quick side note, you should expect to see a new batch of characters and emojis added into iOS 13 at some point, but just probably not right at launch. With that said, some emojis that could be included are flamingos, otters, waffles, people holding hands, and more. One other quick side note, Apple is said to be working on a new Find My iPhone app, which will actually combine Find My Friends and iPhone into one application, which makes a whole lot of sense to me and could potentially be debuted in iOS 13. The most notable new feature here would be the new Find Network feature for allowing Apple devices to be tracked even when not connected to Wi-Fi or a cellular network by leveraging other nearby devices. So that could be really cool. Finally, in iOS 13, we should expect to see some pretty substantial updates for the iPad, which is what I am personally the most excited about. Apple is said to be introducing a feature for displaying multiple windows inside of a single iPad app using a tab view. There's also improved multitasking said to be coming with iPad apps to support multiple windows and stackable cards within applications. Apps will feature sheets that are initially attached to a part of the screen, but then can be detached with a drag gesture to become a card that could be manipulated. Cards could be potentially stacked on top of one another, and a depth effect will indicate whether cards are on top or on the bottom, while a flinging gesture could dismiss the card. There have even been a few rumors circulating that Apple is considering an accessibility feature that will allow mouse support for the iPad Pro, and while these rumors do not specifically state iOS 13 as the timeline for this feature, one would assume that that would probably be a good time for that announcement. Unfortunately, the information we have is that this feature will work with the iPad Pro and its USB-C port, meaning it's going to be a wired connection. But I say, why stop there? Let's make this a full-on feature and allow wireless mouse support. There are tons of concepts and renders out there of what all of these features could look like on an iPad, and I am so excited for what the future could possibly be. The last rumor we should touch on is cross-platform iOS and Mac apps. In fact, it's much more of a reality since it actually started happening last year in iOS 12 and macOS Mojave. Marzipan, which is Apple's internal codename for the framework that gives developers the ability to engineer a single application that can run on an iPad, an iPhone, and a Mac. As I said before, we saw the first part of this with macOS Mojave and the inclusion of Apple News, Stocks, voice memos, and the Home app. This year in iOS 13 and macOS 10.15, Apple is planning to expand this functionality to developers, which would make it easy for iOS apps to be tweaked for porting over to the Mac. All of this looks like potential super exciting stuff for people who have been clamoring for some of these features for years, and it looks like some of them might actually become reality in about 1 month. So let us know which feature you want to see come out of WWDC in the comment section down below. This has been Dan with Mac Rumors. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.